as much as I love playing music, I figured out that I'm really good at just like loving music.
This is Champagne is Also a Band podcast. One songwriter, one song. I'm Sven, your host for a journey into the music of Champaign-Urbana. Recorded in the Blue Box studio with a songwriter from the Champaign-Urbana music scene, past or present. Champagne is Also a Band podcast is proud to be a part of the Champagne Showers Podcast Network. Welcome to Champagne is Also a Band podcast. Today, I have Patrick Lyke, and you may know Patrick Lyke from such bands as Finer Feelings, Melanome, and Designer Dog. But today, we're going to be talking about a song that he did under a project he calls Prickly Pear. So, Patrick, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sven.
Today we're going to be listening to a song called Army Surplus, and so without further ado, let's listen to the song.
of people who are taking a hard line against us are firmly convinced that they are the last defenders of civilization. I think they see themselves as the Roman Senate perched among the ruins, man, defending it against the barbarian hordes. The last stronghold of Mother God Home and Apple Pie, and they're full of shit.
Welcome back. So, of course, my first and favorite question to always ask is, what came first? Was it the music or was it the lyrics?
I think mostly the music, particularly that acoustic part, has just chords that I use all the time. I think I've used them in several songs I've written. I think like it was probably like the acoustic guitar, that electric guitar, and then lyrics, and then I messed around with other stuff.
So, okay, so you messed around with the lyrics, but what was the first thing that came out with the lyrics? Like, what do you remember as like the first line?
I don't even know. I mean, this was like 2020. This was like lockdown pandemic. Tim McGee gave me a Tascam like home recorder. It was, weird pandemic times. I think he brought it, left it on the porch, and I left him a Ziploc bag with a Tecate and a lime in it or something. And then so I think I had this thing and I'm like, well, I have to use it. I have to write something. Yeah, I don't know what line came first.
I feel like we exist and by we, I just mean me, but I feel like I exist in these two worlds, and I feel like certain things that people have said make me also believe that this is not just my viewpoint only, but the sense that the people that we were during the pandemic, and then like the people that we are now, and also the people that we were before the pandemic. I mean, I understand that we're still in the midst of the pandemic in some very alarming ways. However, sometimes I feel like that was a different person. And so I can see where it would be really hard to like parse out some of those initial moments, or even like, how did it all come together? And like, to me, it still feels like this dream world of like, that was what existed. So, and also time felt very weird. Like I'll say something, I'm like, oh yeah, but I couldn't have done that, but because this came first. But in my mind, I keep thinking that this thing happened first, but it's like, one can't happen without the other. Anyway, that was my wandering way of...
Definitely, like, pre-pandemic, pandemic, post-pandemic, I'm three different people entirely. Like, I totally get what you're saying. And I think about that a lot. I think about who I was before, who I was during, and who I am now.
I'm guessing then you had the impetus of writing the song and recording it, but was it the motivation that you had to record something that pushed this forward, or was it that you were like, oh, I need to use this one song that I've been working on. It's kind of getting fleshed out, but you know what I'm just so curious about that.
It was definitely like a culmination, like almost like, yeah, the stopping point of where I was at mentally. I had been like absorbing just massive amounts of like 60s counterculture media, the Nuggets comps, like Ken Kesey type stuff, buying like psych records from the 60s that have like one good song on them, just like getting into like the politics and Nam. And then I became like very obsessed with that generation of people and who they are now, and kind of the juxtaposition of that. And then I had watched a PBS documentary called The Day the 60s Died, and it was about Kent State. And that was kind of, I think that was the, all right, I'm going to write this song. It was a student protest against the draft in the Vietnam War, and the National Guard shot the protesters.
I hate to say, when you wrote this and were thinking about Kent State, you didn't necessarily think about that there would be the activation of the National Guard that was, I mean, I don't like that it's, history does repeat itself, and it's just like, do we ever learn? And I don't necessarily think that this song is about that specifically.
I mean, my mind was going down so many avenues that I would hope that comes through in the song. That, I mean, even then, like, everything was so crazy and scary then, and then it's not funny, but it's funny how you look back on it now and you're like, that was not as crazy as it is now,
right? I think it's interesting, though, too, that it feels like those that were so anti-war Vietnam War back then, and maybe this is my own poor perception of things, but I'm like, it feels like those are the people that are kind of they feel very pro-Trump now, but I don't know if that's exactly, I don't know if
that was kind of a bit of the point of the song, was that how do you go from protesting the Vietnam War, I mean, just that whole era, the era of the civil rights movement, anti-Vietnam, you know, the creation of stuff like Social Security and all of these sort of things, this idea of progress, landing on the moon, all of this sort of stuff, to kind of an anti-progress sort of generation. I mean, I don't think I've thought about anything more in my life than I've thought about this. And I imagine a lot of people have thought about it because we interact with people from that generation all the time. And maybe a lot of people have learned good things from these people, you know, parents or family members or mentors or whatever have been taught, you know, good things, and then sort of seen their attitudes change or their true selves come out or something, you know.
One of the things that struck me in the song is there's this sense of, I keep wanting to use words like progress or growth, is that there's an assumption in our own getting older, I'm just going to say, because I don't necessarily see that as growth or progress, but since we start at one point and we move to another, that seems like that's progress, good or bad. But I feel like there's this, maybe this sense of being worn out or feeling like you have to abandon the things of your youth because those were the foolish things. I feel like that's some kind of a refrain that we hear often, you know, as we grow up. As I say that as an old man, but
there's a lot of that. I mean, there's you've been beaten down, or, you know, that's not how the world works type of thing, which is somewhat valid because the world's not an easy place. But
right,
I think it's kind of cowardly to just kind of succumb to the dark side of that.
Right.
To just like, well, you know, life was shit for me, so it should be shit for you too, sort of attitude.
But it's also that I'm tired of having it been shit, that I don't want to have to continue with an effort that will continue to make me feel like I am getting shit. I only say this from like trying to understand the process, or thinking about where that sense of when you do something very altruistic, sometimes there's this weird rubber banding effect of like you stretch it so far that it snaps back, that there's this sense of like, well, where's my piece? Where's my return?
I mean, I can be very blunt on what I think that is. I'm trying to be polite about it, but I think this is a generation of people who did big things like Woodstock, these sort of like these things that are very huge in our culture now. Like in our culture now, the biggest things are still the Beatles. Woodstock is celebrated every year, you know, however many years, the CBS News report on Woodstock, you know, all of these things. The biggest movie in the country is like the Bob Dylan biopic. The Beatles are getting a cinematic universe. All of these people control our governments. They've just never stopped controlling basically all aspects of this thing, and now they're kind of mad at us for being like, maybe that wasn't that cool. And they're like, wait, we did the civil rights, we did Woodstock, you know, what are you complaining about? You know, we solved world peace, you know. And that's my blunt interpretation of it. I know there's a lot more nuance to it, but
sure. God, okay, so there's so many things that I keep jumping back and forth in my own mind of like where I should go.
That's the problem too, because this problem thing is still in my head and I haven't quite solved it. So there's a million avenues.
The thing is that the way that you speak of it now is someone who wrote this song in now, right? But I'm also saying that the voice that is used, I'm almost wondering who the person is that isn't you, that is the voice in this, because it's like you stood with the rest of us, right? Again, I always think of things when I'm trying to wrap my head around it from a narrative perspective of like, who's the person that's talking, who's the person that's talking to a person, who is the subject. And so all three of those things can be very distinct. Mm-hmm. But they can all be the same person, obviously, like someone talking to themselves about the things that they've done, or somebody that's talking to someone else about someone else. There's a whole bunch of perspectives. So I'm curious about, I know you're you, but I also, who do you think is the person that is the narrator of this story, so to speak?
Probably it's a bit me. I mean, I think it's from the perspective of somebody involved in that time, whether it's, protests, someone who's at Kent State, someone who's at Woodstock. And I think I'm taking a pretty empathetic take at it, which I still, I know I just kind of railed on it, but I feel like I still have a pretty empathetic take on it. Just kind of like, what happened to this? Where we lost the plot.
So one of the things that I kind of pick up from that perspective is there's almost a question, and it's not one of the three things that I mentioned before, is like maybe even that weird fear of, shit, am I going to turn into this person? Whatever switched in this person's head, is that going to be the thing that eventually switches in my head?
It's very much on my mind, not to put myself on some pedestal. I don't think that's going to happen to me because I'm so obsessed with it not happening to me. I think I put a lot of effort into taking the sort of trickier route and not just conforming. And also, as I get older, seeing sort of people aging too, kind of getting stuck in their ways or sort of starting to sound like the same people who used to say, your music sucks, you should listen to my music, or back in my day, that sort of shit is happening, but it's coming out of the mouths of people the same age as me. So I'm like, I don't want to, at the end of my life, have done a complete reverse on what I believe is right, and unless I'm figuring out along the way that what I believed isn't right, and now I'm moving in the right direction,
But that's the tricky part. It's like, I know that there's things that I felt a certain way about at a certain time, and now they just don't ring as true, or they just don't ring as personally, or they just, like, there's nothing to grab onto anymore. See, this now we're turning into the whole, like, this is Sven's worries and Sven's problems.
They're valid. I mean, life just kicks the shit out of you. We have it better than a lot of people, but life just kicks the shit out of you. You see these things that you believe in and you love so much just kind of deteriorate and crumble, or you don't have the time or energy to stand up for everything that you love, because everything you love is being attacked at the same time,
Right.
So it's like you just sort of start letting things go. I don't know.
Your first verse, it's all about this person that holds in your jeans. When were you last seen in army surplus? You stood with the rest of us. And I think that that's actually one of the few spots where you vocally, your melody line, you actually have this nice little, like, you hold out the us and you do a little, well, it's a melisma, but it's kind of a run of notes, but it feels like you're holding on to that person for just a little bit longer, and you're just like, I'm still kind of carrying this person with you. That's how I feel when I hear that. But then, I think I just got something. The 67 shots, is that reference to Kent State, or what is that reference to?
I believe that's how many bullets the National Guard fired at the student protesters. 67 bullets.
It's funny because I did not catch that Kent State reference until you had mentioned it, and then as I jumped in, I'm like, oh, that's the 67 shots. Okay. Like, I feel like it's midway through that second stanza of the verse. Is that even the right word? I don't know. But of the halfway through of your grouping in the verse, it's 67 shots, feels like we all lost. And then there's that turning point, as you said before, like the Kent State, that's the death of everything. And it's like, took off your beads, moved out to Wall Street, that whole, like, it's all counterculture until somebody says, well, shit, I gotta make some money.
Well, that was I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember exactly what was said, but towards the end of this documentary, they're interviewing people who were there. They asked someone, what did you do afterwards? And leading up to this, it's all pretty terrible. I mean, these people get shot at, they go home. Their parents' attitudes are that they're traitors to the country, even though they were the ones being shot at by the National Guard. Right after that, there's a big protest in New York where people beat up anti-war protesters. Like, these people are defeated. And so she says, well, what did you do after that? And she just said, I got a job. Like, what else could I do? You know, and
Right.
in that moment, it's like, well, what do you really blame her?
Right.
You know, like she lost. She's up against it. And that's kind of where it was like, we're doing this stuff, we're protesting, we're doing Vietnam, like we're going to change the world, you know, and then there's just the almighty power of evil is just stronger than your movement.
And then there's that, I refer to it as the chorus because it's the part that you repeat.
That's
and it
the
seems
ghost
like
chorus.
it's the, you know, where did you go? Where did you go? How did you see, yet move around blindly? You use that chorus, you know, twice. In this context, it's this person, the way I look at it is they saw the truth and then they turned to Wall Street, like to get a job, right? You know, they saw it, you know, and now they're disappearing.
If you can't stop it, join it. And then to just get kind of blunt again, I mean, it is kind of what happened. I mean, all
Yeah.
of the hippies are now the, you know, millionaires and billionaires who are bankrupting us all, you know?
Well, that's all we can do is now become a part of the system, right? And maybe even with the belief that we can change the
Change it
system
from within.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say this, even though it's kind of out of sequence of things. I keep thinking about the title of Army Surplus is, you know, the way that Army Surplus is used often is it's the leftover things that they sell in a store, kind of in much the same way as, you know, these people that served a purpose and then they get reused. If we think about this in terms of people, it's the stuff that's left over and then has to be somehow used in some way, but then it's kind of sold off. I don't know. I wanted to bring up that point before I forgot to mention it because that was one thing that it kept going through my mind, and I didn't necessarily have the idea of Kent State in there, and also of just I didn't think about it in terms of that turning point.
It's also a lot of imagery from that era is protesting veterans or servicemen, you know, in their army surplus, or even hippies had kind of adopted some of those military jackets and vests and stuff. Even like those movies like Full Metal Jacket and where like the army uniforms have kind of been torn up and there's peace patches on them, and you know, it became kind of adopted by the movement at the time too, to wear that sort of stuff.
Whatever the reverse of wolf in sheep's clothing is, right? You know, sheep in wolf's clothing. I don't know. Anyway, and then I also learned something. Of course, I had to look up Yasker's farm. As soon as I looked it up, I was like, oh, of course, it's the Woodstock location of Yasker's farm, a 600-acre dairy farm by Max Yasker. That was something that wasn't necessarily about protest specifically, but it also stands as this pinnacle of like, this is what the 60s was all about.
I think they use it really as this landmark of the 60s. I think that generation holds Woodstock up very highly while also kind of hating it.
If you were to look at all the non-music, it was like a health hazard. And does that, I mean, like, if it continued on, it could have been a real health disaster.
Yeah.
Like, it could have been a real super dangerous.
Well, I don't think it was ever like repeated successfully at what they did Altamont, and that just ended up it's also a very cool thing. Like, Woodstock is a cool thing, and I do think that people genuinely felt something, and they felt like maybe they had solved something, even if it was a bit naive. There's a lot of quotes of like, how do you get this many people together and there was in a single violent incident? Maybe the culture is changing, like maybe we're all in on this peace stuff, you know?
Right.
And like, you can even see, I think like Grace Slick and David Crosby went on like a talk show like immediately after, and they are just hyped. They legit think they just saved the world.
You know, you have that moment of like that hope of the Yasker's farm, Woodstock, Star Spangled and So Young, and then of course Shannon does the So Young in the background, which is lovely. And then when you say in the, I guess you want to say in the second verse, when you say after the siege, or should I say this? Well, sorry, I won't overthink this. After the siege, Is there something you're specifically also referring to? Because
it's probably just Kent State again.
Shaved your face clean, patched up your jeans, moved out to DC.
Probably went to work for the Nixon administration.
Right?
I need to stop because the song is not supposed to be a negative song. The song is supposed to be like an empathetic and caring song because there's so many things.
It can be many things all at the same time.
I think that we all have to give up our innocence. We believe these lofty things and then we kind of figure out, the reality of the situation. And I'm also just kind of questioning, well, do we? Because we're also like living in a system that's forcing us to do this. Well, what if we just didn't live in that system? That you just have to get so hardened in your life. This is a generation of people who raised us. There's still love there,
right?
And I think that they do still like love their children and their families, and you just kind of wonder how it isn't connecting to them that current things being done by the government to other people's families aren't something worth caring about, or, that's something that can go on forever. In my mind, it correlates like it's not supposed to be like an indictment. This is all stuff that's like, as Americans, it's in our DNA, Woodstock, the Beach Boys, all of this sort of stuff. We love this stuff. Our generation isn't responsible for that stuff.
Was this something you had written and then you heard the David Crosby quote, or did you know that you wanted to include that at the end?
I think that was like pretty impulsive. Like I knew about that clip. Like I said, I was being a freaking like 60s counterculture librarian. I was watching Easy Rider. Yeah, this Neil Young movie he made called Journey to the Past, which is like half concert footage and then half just very interesting but kind of boring, like avant-garde hippie film sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just this brief moment where David Crosby does that, and I'm just messing with this Tascam. I don't know what I'm doing. Most of the song is like, I don't know what I'm doing, and it's just like, oh, I could totally just put something at the end of this, and I just put a microphone up to the speaker and dropped the needle on this record and recorded it. And I lucked out because in the recording too, it has that echo, because I wouldn't have been able to figure out how to add that echo, and that echo is cool. It's perfect. I sent you this song and you had to figure out how to turn it up. I don't know this whole I gave up on this Tascam, and I feel bad because I should do Tim's probably wondering where it is.
Well, now he knows. Yeah. He's gonna be like, finally, I was wondering where that was.
I don't want to give it back to him because there's 10 other songs on there that I don't want him to find them.
There is an erase button. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just gonna have to say it because I don't think enough people think about this. Is not all songs have to be perfect, and not all songs are best when they're perfect. I guess the way that I want to look at it is, sometimes you just have to put that song out and let people hear it.
I mean, at the time, I had much bigger plans. This isn't the first time I've, pre-planned out, the next 5 years of my life in terms of music. And then within a month, been never mind, that sounds hard.
Yeah.
There was going to be much more songs. It was also the pandemic.
Right.
There's a lot of dreaming about what you're going to do.
I'm going to mention now kind of what my favorite part of the song is. And it's an odd, I don't know, maybe it's not that odd, but I feel like it's odd because it's the additional voice that you add in, I want to say, the in-between the vocals, the guitar, some of the guitar solo work that you do, kind of the guitar interludes. There's one thing that I keep noticing about the motif that you use. It keeps feeling like you go through a pattern and you feel like it's going to come back down to the tonic, but then you go back up to the third and then you start the process over again. So it feels like this one, it doesn't feel like it ever resolves, but in some ways it also is this weird, in my mind, it feels like something that's just kind of gliding along and like maybe starts to dip, but then gets lifted back up again. I don't know what it is, but in the context of this song, you're kind of waiting for it to land back on the tonic to like finally resolve this whole thing. But then at the same time, it's just this weird experience of it doesn't really end. It just keeps going. It's like this weird, like passing on. It never really touches the ground because it doesn't stop. And I feel like that's kind of this question that you're asking throughout the whole song. It's like, where did you go? Like, how are you not the same person that you once were? And if you really grew or you became a better person, why aren't you acting like a better person? I mean, it's this weird, if I say roller coaster, I feel like I'm throwing out a huge cliche, but that's what I keep hearing when I hear that point in that motif. Just keeps going. And then you just launch into the next verse, and I feel like it does this really wonderful, like, we're not done answering this question. So you might almost say that the answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. I'm so sorry I had to do that. That's my favorite part in this song. Like, it has this nice impulsion to it. That's my favorite part in the song. So I'm kind of curious what your favorite part in the song is.
Honestly, I think my favorite part is Shannon in the song. That's why I've been sitting on the song for a long time. And then when I kind of sent you the mixes and you kind of messed with it, there was the one where she kind of blended in more. The way she sings and emphasizes certain stuff, and particularly at the end, I think like the juxtaposition to how I'm singing things, I feel like I sound kind of worried when I'm singing, but her voice almost feels like it's stuck in the hopeful part of the song. Her voice is still the one, at Woodstock. And the way it's kind of in the background, but loud enough, almost like an echo. Sure. It's like almost an echo of the original, like the point for all of the hippie movement and everything, just like the positivity, so I thought it was like a cool, almost like response to how I was approaching the song that I think makes it interesting. I do remember vibing on that guitar part for a long time. Just like, that might be why I think I even play that guitar part like more bars than I think maybe I should have. Because I just remember it like felt really good. And I do remember like Ashley told me once that like I make these choices that are kind of the opposite choice of what should be done. I have been kind of obsessed with like things that sound good but don't quite sound good. That song, Yellow Brick Road by Elton John, like it builds and builds, and you think it's going to build up to like something big, but every verse ends back at the bottom. Like it's just that song never truly gives you that satisfaction you're waiting for. I'm kind of into that vibe too, where it's just like you're wanting something and you're not going to get it.
So my last question in this section is, why did you pick this song to be the song you wanted to talk about today?
Because it's still on my mind. It's been years, and I don't think I've written a song since this song. That's another reason. It's like, what do I give you? But that's the most recent song, but it's also, that song is still on my mind in terms of the subject matter, but also in terms of that I like this song and I didn't do anything with it. I think I had big dreams for a minute, and I always look back on like, why didn't I do anything with this? Whether it was, re-recorded or write more stuff or just put it out as is, but I didn't do anything with it. And I think about this song enough that, I wish I had.
Champagne is Also a Band podcast is proud to support Jubilee Cafe. Jubilee Cafe is a free weekly meal program at Community United Church of Christ, 805 South 6th Street in Champaign, Illinois. Jubilee Cafe serves a home-cooked meal from 5 to 6:30 each Monday. Their mission is to feed hungry people by cooking healthy, delicious meals and by serving their guests restaurant-style with servers waiting on tables. Jubilee Cafe is open to anyone who cares to eat with them. Because food insecurity among students is so high, they serve students as well as others in and around the Champaign-Urbana community who struggle with hunger. Meals are free to all and will be served each Monday evening. located in the accessible lower level of the building at 6th and Daniel Streets in Champaign. For more information on the meal or how to volunteer, go to the Jubilee Cafe CUCC Facebook page or email them at jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. That's jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. Welcome back. So, of course, Patrick, what is your favorite Champaign-Urbana venue, past or present?
Currently, it's Rose Bowl. I mean, Rose Bowl's just doing a great job. Yeah, there's just so much happening at Rose Bowl. I've loved a lot of venues, though. I loved Memphis on Main.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
There's
yeah.
just something about that place. I think also that they were just like willing to just let us play. Millie Nome played a lot of shows that I look back on and I'm like, wow, thanks for letting us do that because that was a mess. Like, very ambitious band, but couldn't always follow through. So, I mean, there was a while where it was like Memphis on Main. Next door was like the High Dive.
Right.
Cowboy was doing stuff. Bentley's was doing stuff. We played a really terrible / cool residency at Bentley's.
A residency? Okay.
Because this is how long back this like crazy obsession with like the 60s stuff was. There's like the Who would do a residency at like Leeds or whatever, and I was like, a residency? Like, that's crazy. Like, that people still do residencies, but like they just play like at the same place like 5 times. And
right.
Ashley from Millie Nome talked them into letting us do that. And there was one particular show, it was like on Halloween, and we were like, let's let Ryan Carlson read The Raven over us just like riffing, because like The Raven's like a short story.
Yeah.
It takes like a half hour to read The Raven, and we never practiced. We were just like, it's a short story, it'll be like 3 minutes. It takes like a half hour to read that. But they let us do it.
Right.
I still wake up in the middle of the night sometimes like, oh no, did we actually do that? It was cool though. I
was going to say, there had to have been at least one person that was just like, you know what? I went to this show once and there was this band and they just played and played and played and they had somebody read The Raven like in the background or whatever.
And that one person was Sven.
I don't think I knew Millie Nome at that point. I think I met y'all. I think you had an Exile show at the old location, and it's no secret that we've known each other for a while. But it's weird to think about like what actually was the thing that
that brought us together.
Yeah, that I know that it sounds so cheesy, but you know, it's fair.
I remember meeting you. I at least my memory of it is at upstairs at Mike and Molly's. I think me and Jordan were at a show or something, and he invited you.
Oh yeah.
And then I think we talked about maybe like recording something.
The Millie Nome EP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about the old Exile though made me remember that Finer Feelings EP, we did a release show there.
Yes.
And we didn't bother to move the CD racks out, so we played in that tiny entrance.
Oh yeah.
But we had Neoga open for us right before they played a show down the street, which is cool. Like, you could see the same band twice in one day.
Yeah.
But they were just like cool. And I only knew about Neoga through Kyle, because Kyle's like really good friends with my wife and her sister. They went to college together and grew up together. And I just remember there was like 6 dudes in that band, and Kyle just set his keyboard on the display case of the counter, and that's how he played. That was pretty wild, but we're all just like in there like sardines, like right at the entrance. That's where we played the show.
Wow. That must have been early. I remember when was that the one that you released as Finer Feelings, and it was like you had those sandwich cases or something?
No, so we did a record store day. We wanted to participate in record store day. So we did a re-release of the EP just on like CDRs that we put in those Tupperware containers that perfectly fit a sandwich. And I don't remember what we included, but one thing I remember is that me and Chris both like wrote a recipe for our favorite sandwich or something. He probably wrote a pretty good sandwich, and I probably made a joke of it or something. But maybe we made like 8 of them, and we numbered them. But I've met 2 people who have them. You have one, and another guy has one. I don't know where the other 6 are. You have one, right?
No.
Oh, maybe I only know one person. I assumed you had one.
Well, I
Are
just
you
remember
currently
you had
bidding on one on eBay? A big bidding war?
Yes, obviously. It's up to $3.
Oh shit!
They're going by a penny each time the bid is a penny. No, but that's the thing. It's like maybe I'm just not in that scene part anymore. But it just seemed like there were these crazy ways to get your CDs out. And maybe that's just because it's now everybody's all about streaming. But I remember seeing a Dirty Feathers show at Exile, and it was like they brought around these like kind of, I want to say they're like cardboard sleeves that were like hand painted, and they were like hand numbered. And I just don't feel like anybody does that kind of thing as much anymore, and so I kind of miss that kind of thing. But then again,
that's also like coming right out of like there was, particularly when I was actually starting to get shows, I think we were all coming out of that huge indie boom that happened, that like Jack White playing a Kmart guitar or whatever that he bought for $15, right, where that same guitar now goes for like $600 or whatever, because it's like every sort of scene DIYs it, and then it becomes cool, and they get priced out of it. I'm not saying any of that was cheap, because I don't remember having a single dollar in my pocket back then, but like it seemed easier to kind of pull that stuff off, where now, I mean, everything is so monetized. And I think that like things change, but things stay the same. We have local bands still putting out physical media. I was spinning Dave Pride's record the other day, on vinyl, Tim McGee has one, Primitive Light. And the way people consume it's different too, I don't think it means it's getting consumed less necessarily. But you're talking about that Dirty Feathers, dude. They played a show at Exile that we played with them.
Yeah.
It was just like a record store day thing, I think. It wasn't like us opening for them. It was a bunch of bands. But they loaded that place with smoke machines. The inside of the store.
I'm curious, because I feel like I should scrape your brain for this one, but what do you think makes a good music scene?
That's a tough question, because I think we still have a good music scene. I think we've had eras of music scenes. I think we have a really good one currently. So I think maybe there's just places to play, which, we don't have as many as we used to. As long as high school kids and college kids and stuff are still wanting to play any genre in a live capacity, which I think that is definitely still very much happening. As long as there's somebody eventually to pass the torch to,
Right.
And the torch just keeps getting passed, so...
Well, it's interesting you say the torch getting passed, because I feel like I haven't gotten on this soapbox in a while, but I feel that need again to have places where it's all ages. I mean, not necessarily that all the music is going to be the most uplifting, but something where kids can hear live music that isn't just program music that's through, I don't know, like school or etc. But
we're so plugged in now that might be pretty important to like have kind of like an organic like live experience, to be like, I remember thinking like Headlights and Santa were like nationally huge bands. I was young and I would go to a show and this place would be packed and these songs would be good, and I assumed like Headlights were selling out shows all over the country. Santa,
I keep thinking like Elsinore, and like
Elsinore was big, and these bands are great, that's why I bring them up, but I was thinking they were in the same conversation as like Vampire Weekend and the Strokes and stuff.
Sure.
Because that's how like it felt at the time, and then people started getting more dialed into like the internet and finding out like, oh, like, some of these things were pretty centralized to just Illinois or Champaign or a few cities in the United States or whatever, or essentially just not as major as I thought they were.
Right.
You know? And now it's like, I would be cool to like, as a you know, a 16-year-old or something, to go out into Champaign and kind of have that experience, you know, almost the mystery of just like loving this band and just thinking they're huge, as much as like I wanted these bands to go all the way. Like in my mind, they were. Sometimes it'd be a weekend, you know, you'd see Grandkids at Memphis on Main the next day, like Rigo would be playing at Cowboy, you know. You might be able to go over to another spot and it'd be like the Feathers or something, you know, where it's just like, if, you know, like these bands are your life, you know. Maybe they don't need to get the Pitchfork Best New Music or whatever. Like maybe a good music scene is just like the people in the community like live for these bands, you know. And I think there's a lot of that. As much as I love playing music, I figured out that I'm really good at just like loving music, and in a way that's also easier. The pressure's not on me anymore to like, it's tough to be in a band. It's tough. Like you got to hold down a job, you know, you got family stuff, it's expensive to be in a band. It's all this sort of stuff. I don't want it to be, because I want there to be bands forever.
When I was younger, I was like, God, I don't have enough time to do this or this or this. And now I'm like, I can't even get myself to find an hour a week to rehearse. Like, I don't even know how I would be able to get together with other people to rehearse, much less even finding enough
your
to
bass player's got a, you know, he's got a parent-teacher conferences, and your drummer is in 5 other bands because there's only 3 drummers in town. Right. And your guitar player is, you know, he's works the night shift or something. It's like, well, okay, maybe we'll try again next week, you know?
Right. I feel like if you got into a pattern, you could probably keep that up, where it's like, this is the thing that you do for fun. But I don't know. It's weird. But then again, I don't know if I'm really like a hangout kind of guy. You know, I don't. Yeah,
I want to be.
I do too, but
I don't know how to be.
But then there's those moments where I'm like, God, I am so happy that there is no one else around, and I can just not see another soul for like days. If I can do that, I'm so happy. I don't know. I'm such a loner. That's why I talk to people and invite them over to my studio
you're
to
such
talk.
A loner. That's why you have a podcast.
Well, I didn't say I was smart. But what do you think we could do better?
Go to shows. I mean, I don't want to say it's as simple as that, and I also don't want to say I'm the best at that, you know, and I'm never going to knock anybody for having a reason they can't go to a show. But you just got to go to shows. If you love rock and roll music and you want rock and roll music to still be played in your show, in your town, people need to be at that show to justify that existing, right? Like,
right.
If you love bluegrass, you got to show up, you know? If you love jazz, you've got to show up. There's always going to be bar bands in some sort, but
right.
I think about stuff like jazz and classical, like there's big funding cuts being cut, and a lot of that stuff comes from grants, you know? You just got to show up. I mean, I am annoying about Spotify. There's a lot of causes to get behind.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I don't need to die on this hill. If you love music, particularly if you know somebody who plays music, you got to switch to a different streaming platform. You've got to buy a record. You've got to buy a t-shirt. You've got to buy a CD. Like one record is how many streams, right? Like 7 months of somebody streaming your shit, like actually just repeatedly streaming your stuff, is like one record purchase. Yeah. Like you could get millions of streams through like selling like 4 records or something, you know,
right.
CDs or t-shirts, tickets at the door, tipping the band. Spotify's a thing. It's there. The other streamers aren't much better, but they are better.
Right.
It blows my mind that like Pitchfork and all these things don't immediately link to like Apple Music or something, which has been proven to pay out better per stream.
Well, and I also like, at least, okay, people may disagree, but like even Apple Music, you can at least kind of jump back into the, I want to say the iTunes kind of model, and you could buy a song if you wanted to. And honestly, like a song, if you bought a song, I don't know what the percentage is of what they return, but I guarantee you that even if you just buy a 99-cent song, that'll be worth like 10,000 streams easily.
Well, it's better
right?
to pay 99 cents for one song than to pay a 1 month $12 fee that gets spent to all the CEOs of Spotify. Another huge chunk of change goes to the top 5 artists streamed, so it's just only going to Taylor Swift and Paul McCartney. And then, maybe your local little band gets a peanut,
Well, at least they can eat that.
At least they can eat that night, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. I don't.
And we're in a weird, like, some people are super into physical media, some people aren't. Some bands, rightfully so, are saying it's not worth the money to invest in physical media. They're not wrong.
I get it.
Other people who love physical media have to be understanding of that. Giving whatever you have to spare, times are tough, but whatever you have to spare through whatever means, putting the money in the bucket at the Rose Bowl, buying a t-shirt, whatever, is better than nothing at all. That's also important for a scene.
Even if you can't support a band financially, but I feel like there's ways to, talk about the band.
Word of mouth is still very real.
It is very real,
I get very excited when anyone talks to me about music. I will more than likely listen to any song you send me. You love this thing, post it on your Instagram, any sort of social media that,
right.
I don't know, like that shit. There's still those like great stories of just things taking off online. And we have a wealth of material in this community that like fits the criteria, that isn't any different than this other drop in the bucket stuff I've seen just take off on the internet. There's plenty of stuff here that if like that was happening in Asheville or like Tucson or something, it would have made its way here. Like it's that good that there's stuff in our community that could, through the proper channels, very easily spread.
Champaign is Also a Band podcast is proud to support Exile on Main Street. Exile on Main Street, located in the old train station building at 100 North Chestnut Street in downtown Champaign, has been helping to build record collections since 2004. Carrying a wide array of new and used LPs, CDs, and video games. Exile on Main Street has something for just about any music enthusiast and old-school gaming devotee. Exile also hosts regular free live music shows on its stage, so be sure to check out their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for the up-to-date details on the next upcoming event. Open 7 days a week, they can be reached by phone at 217-398-MAIN. That's 217-398-6246. Welcome back. Patrick.
Sven.
What is your favorite non-musical thing or things? You had to know this was coming.
I know these are coming. I'm not going to prepare because I thought it was going to be so
laid back and fun. Come on.
It has been laid back and fun. I feel like that's really hard because I just only like music.
You like reading? I do. Do I have to tell you the things that you like that are not?
I just want to know how much you know about me. I like reading.
You like to be the little spoon?
I do. I do like reading. I like reading a lot.
I mean, I've always thought that you were definitely into, basically history, and then also kind of within the context of even music, but also just when it's a bigger picture, or even if it's more of, I don't know, I guess that's what history is, but I guess
I like reading. I like finding out what did Conan O'Brien said. He liked reading because he just wanted to know what happened. Something like that. Like he wants to know what happened. I like trying to piece together like how we got here from whatever avenue, whether it's like history or pop culture or whatever.
One of your other favorite things is obscure references.
Are they that obscure?
Well, no, I mean, I guess that just kind of fits with it, because I think that in your heart of hearts, they're not necessarily that obscure. You will make a reference to something, and I'll be like, okay. I mean, I kind of, sometimes I follow you, sometimes I don't. And then I just have to nod and be like, okay, I need to look that up when I remember. But that's part of the whole studying history.
I consume a lot of media, and I think I do it because I'm constantly feeling like time is running out. It'll be like a list of the 100 movies you have to see before you die, and I'll watch them because I'm like, am I going to die before I see these 100 movies?
Now, I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like I would be not a better person, I feel like I would capture more. I feel like I'm going to have to reverse engineer this. Okay. Every once in a while, I say, I need to look up and watch Andy Warhol's The Cure for Insomnia. Like, I feel like I have to force myself to say, one, that I did watch it, two, that I did watch it, and three, I'm really tired now. But no, I it's like, I don't know why I do that, because I will want to watch the shittiest movies because I understand that perhaps in some weird likelihood, they may just have some thing that I didn't know about, or they have some significance or something.
They're relevant.
Yeah, but they always
like
turn
Andy
out to
Warhol
not be.
movie.
They also tend to not be all that relevant. You know, it's just like, I'll watch a really shitty movie because somebody made some reference to it, and they're like, "Oh, it sounds like that movie." And
I watched a lot of shitty movies when I was in that 60s phase, like The Trip with like Peter Fonda.
Oh.
Or like
have you ever watched Skin? The Monkeys movie?
Head. I have it on
why did
special edition DVD, Sven.
Fuck. Why did I say Skin?
Because it's just as bad of a title as Head.
Yeah, okay.
I love the movie Head by the Monkees. I will defend the Monkees till the day I die.
There was like a whole bunch of bands that did that kind of thing. You know, you had, I don't know what the hell. Why are we going? I don't usually go this far off topic.
The Strawberry Alarm Clock was in that Roger Ebert movie.
Oh shit!
The Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Right.
Yeah, the Beatles made movies.
Well, I was thinking like, you know, Pink Floyd, The Wall.
Yeah.
And then Tommy.
Well, then there became like very
the rock opera.
Yeah, like Tommy and Quadrophenia with Sting.
Good point.
But then there kind of went back to like that Hard Day's Night vibe with like Rock and Roll High School.
What's the last thing that you read?
I just finished Careless People, I believe it's called. This woman who worked at Facebook. She got involved. She basically got herself a job at Facebook because she knew that Facebook could play like a huge role in like internationally, and she had like apple pie ideas about what this could be.
Okay.
And then it's kind of about then just going into what we all know now, that like Facebook with all their anti-censorship pretty much helped Trump get elected, pretty much helped the pandemic go off the rails, gave in to China in terms of giving away data and all this sort of stuff. It was good, but it was like the people who need to read this will never read it. And the people who read it are just kind of getting more detail of what they already know. But what I read and I loved was The Last American Road Trip by Sarah Kendzior. She's from St. Louis, and she's written a few books. This one in particular, she wants to show her children America before maybe she can't quite show them these things like the national parks or like all of these things that might not exist. But it's interesting because a lot of travel books, you know, are bigger places, but this is definitely coming from like a Midwestern worldview. Like she goes all over the country, but it's all from this Midwestern worldview, so it hits close to home. And it's just, I think it's very cool that she's from St. Louis, so it's just right down the road from us.
Right.
Pro Midwest, like you're getting us wrong here. Like we're not all, you know, MAGA, whatever,
right.
You know.
It sounds very swan songy.
It, you know, I think there's a bit of hope that maybe things will It's one of those books that I'm like, everyone I know should read this book, and I'm like, but maybe not the people I know who have children.
Right. Yeah.
But it's an excellent book.
What was it called again?
The Last American Road Trip
By
Sarah Kendzior.
Patrick, thank you for being on the show and telling me about your song Army Surplus and your favorite Champaign-Urbana venue and all the good things that are in the Champaign-Urbana music scene and, you know, your favorite non-musical things, even though I feel like I had to pry it out of you.
Oh, I also like baking.
Baking?
That's what I do for my job.
Yeah. Why baking?
I mean, I love cooking too. Baking makes people happy. Steak makes people happy, but like a cake with icing on it makes people way happier.
Interesting.
Yeah. Also, it scratches a creative itch in me that, you know, music used to have.
Patrick, I do appreciate you coming all the way out here on a Tuesday to hang out with me and talk about your song, and like it's just been a pleasure, and I appreciate you coming all the way out here.
I've had a lot of fun. It's always good to hang out with you. Thank you for listening to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. This is Patrick Lyke reminding you, great music is out there. Go find it where you live.
That's a wrap.
Champaign is also a band.
You almost have an NPR voice. It's so good.
Studio South Peter on the inside.
Your bass player's got he's got parent-teacher conferences, and your drummer is in 5 other bands because there's only 3 drummers in town.